Hey guys, what's going on? I just wanted to shoot a quick video and start an introduction to a new series that I'm wanting to do on the channel. I really want to start diving in deep into the philosophy and just some theory of bushcraft survival and generally anything outdoors. I believe there's a lot of misinformation out there that hasn't been thought through critically, so that's what I really want to aim to change. Today I want to talk about bushcraft knife considerations. And I would like for people to start thinking a little deeper than just their favorite, honestly, as reality TV survival star says, I need this X knife with this X blade and this, that, and the other. I really want to make it where everyone's buying the best gear that they can afford. And, you know, I'm a big fan of buy once, cry once. And a part of that is making the right choice the first time. So here are a few considerations that I take into account when purchasing a bushcraft knife, and through thousands and thousands of hours of bush time and trial and error and thousands of dollars of buying and testing gear. And I've bought knives before knowing I would not like them, but I wanted to give them a chance. I just knew it wouldn't fit the philosophy of a bushcraft knife for me. So here are three knives that fit my personal bush knife consideration use. And these are kind of the three that I've landed on as kind of being about perfect. So the first one here is an LT Wright, and this is not the Lagum, it's the little bit smaller version of that knife. The second one, if you're not new to the channel, won't be very much of a surprise. That is the Ultra-lite Bushcrafter, my well-used and loved one. And then the next knife really is a grail knife for a lot of folks, myself included. And this has kind of become my all-around perfect bushcraft knife. So these knives right here, they all kind of fall within the same philosophy of use for me. And, I'd like to explain that to you and see if you can take that into consideration when purchasing a knife for yourself. The first one is the use. What do you want to use the knife for? For me personally, I want to use the knife as I always have it on me, bushcraft knife. And by bushcraft, I mean the ability to process wild materials for fire making, create wild shelters by harvesting natural materials, creating friction fire sets. I really do enjoy that, as well as primitive traps and triggers. So everything, from fire, shelter, food gathering. I want a knife on me that can do all of those things. If I have to process some wild game, I want the knife to be able to do well at that. The downfall of that is a knife that is very, very good at processing wild game will never be super great at woods task. I've come to find that out. If you get a certain profile of a knife, it can do a little bit of both, but it's still never going to be great at both things. So I kind of err on the side of woods processing, since that'll be 98% of what I do with this knife. So lay out your use. What do you want the knife for? And then you have to look at, for me, blade length and grind. So Morris Kahansky kind of said it best when he said about a palm width blade. I wear large, extra large gloves, so all these knives kind of fit within that realm for me. This knife being the largest of them, this is the very, very tip of size that I'll go to. Nothing larger than this. This is preferred for every day having it on me, but this one does just fine. This one kind of bridges the gap between these two. And I've really come to like this knife, especially for the price. These can be had for around $150, $160. These are around $200, give or take, depending on the material. From Rod, which this one came from him directly, about $250. However, you can buy these on the secondhand market and avoid the 5-year wait, but they're going to run you about $500. So I purchased multiple Skookums on the secondhand market, and I've never regretted it. I would actually, for me personally, how well the knife performs and just the design of it, it's worth $500 to me. So the fact that I was able to purchase one at normal retail was just a plus. The grind of the knife. So as you can tell, all of these knives have Scandinavian grinds. These two having an actual 0-degree flat Scandi, and this one coming from the factory with technically a traditional Scandinavian grind, which has some convex to it because traditionally these were sharpened by hand. Now I've since removed pretty much all of the convexing out of the flat blade portion, And I've left it in the belly simply because processing wood, like carving, it's really nice to have that flat edge when you're doing feather sticks, and that's where the majority of your cutting is going to come from. This part up here, it does keep the edge a little bit stronger, if you will. And this being 3V, it's strong enough. We'll touch on that in a moment. These right here, I do prefer for carving because of that flat Scandinavian grind. I've used flat grinds and convex grinds, like a more traditional grind that comes on a bark river, and while they do just fine, I find that for simply carving wood and processing wood, creating, like I said, traps, triggers, feather sticks, friction fire sets, having that Scandinavian grind is best. Even if you just grab a Mora knife, I think the grind on that's just fine. The Mora knife grinds do sometimes chip and roll just because they are so thin. When we go to materials, like I talked about 3V here, you're going to get 3V on this knife. This is 01 or A2. I don't really care because it doesn't really matter to me. And this one's 01. Now, I could have bought this in 3V, but I didn't. Because any knife larger than this, I'm going to want it in 01 or A2. Because if you're actually using the knife out in the woods, you're eventually going to chip the tip, drop the knife, roll the edge, hit a bone when you're processing game, and you're going to have to sharpen that in the field. That is much easier to do on 01 or A2 than 3V. So while this one's 3V, it's great because I mainly use this on a day-to-day basis, not when I'm going out for weeks on end, you know, like a big long camping trip or something like that. In that case, I would make sure to take an 01 or an A2 knife. But a knife where you're planning on coming home every night, you can strop it up real quick. 3V is just fine. It does hold an edge much longer than the other two, but like I said, if you do ever damage it, it's harder to sharpen in the field. The material of the handle is just as important. These are canvas micarta. Now, I have had wooden handled knives in the past, and while they are more aesthetically pleasing, they are weaker exponentially. So the only knives I've ever really damaged that were like these had wood scales on it. This one's a little more coarse of a micarta, which grips a little better, just like this one. And this one I kind of sanded because it was a little bit more of a higher polish from the factory. When we look at the handle shape, you want one with a palm swell, or at least I believe so, because what you're going to do is you're going to let that palm swell fill your palm, and then you can have a little bit more of a micro control with your fingers while you're carving. So actually the palm swell in your palm is what's keeping the knife in your hand, not a death grip on it. Moving into the sheath, I prefer a belt sheath over a neck sheath. So this is the sheath that I use for my ULB. Obviously this is the sheath that came with the LT Wright. Now the sheath that came with the Skookum is this one, which it's fine. As you can tell by some of the wax coming out of it, I don't use it all the time. I actually have an older LT Wright sheath that I'll throw it in just so I can carry it on the belt. I do have the dangler for this, and I've kind of thrown this on here to be able to put it on my belt. But this sheath is very nice, and as you can tell, I mean, I have used it in the woods, but I do prefer a belt sheath over a neck sheath, especially in a knife that's this heavy. This is pretty heavy with the welded pommel on the end of it. These are just a few considerations I think that you should make. You know, your use, your blade length, your materials, your handle shape, and your sheath. Price also, I mean, you can afford what you can afford. I've spent, like I said, thousands of dollars buying random knives, and then I've sold them, traded them, and you know, this, that, and the other. I do believe that these knives here kind of are, I've refined what is the best. If you can go find a ULB, you'll be served just fine. If you can find these come in and out of stock, but they're relatively available. The Lagom's a little bit bigger. So honestly, if you were going to go for like a 2-knife option, I'd get an Ultra-lite Bushcrafter and a Lagom, which is going to be more closer to this size, and that would serve you just fine for, you know, forever. Obviously, I still like the Auroras and different models of each. I mean, the GNS is a great LT Wright model, and I'll go through and make a video about LT Wrights, Bark Rivers, you know, BHKs, Falkneven, and SE. I'll do a dedicated video on each one of those and the knives of that line that I believe are the best. But I just wanted to start this video series out. I'm going to be doing a lot of tabletop stuff just so we can get very specific into the research I've done. and through experience and looking at other people that are experts in the field. If you look at the people who are the very best carvers with a knife, they all kind of gravitate towards this style of knife. So for me, like I said, processing wood material is going to be the biggest thing for me. So I'm going to call them a little more delicate. However, you do still need to be able to baton wood to start a fire with any knife. So I've just wanted to really get into this series and start going over a few different things that I think are going to be really helpful for everyone who's starting out bushcraft or people who are trying to refine their skills and their abilities. So if you drop below what you think, the best knife considerations are for you. If you have any that you think I missed or changed or you'd like to discuss, I'd really like to open up the comment section of these videos as a place to hold discussion and analysis for everyone. So thank you all for watching. Like I said, drop below and let me know what you all think. Until the next one, have a good one.